Hi everyone, it's Constellations here. So today I want to talk about Yomiya. Today is actually day 2 of 1.6. In fact, day 1 the information was already out. Not this information, the information in Honey Hunter, which I will run through in this video. All credits go to Honey Hunter for helping to data mine the information so soon. On day 1 of 1.6 itself, we already have the 1.7 data mine information. That's fantastic work, man. So I'll put a link to Honey Hunter for you guys to check out. But bear in mind that the information right now in Honey Hunter is only Chinese. English has no information yet. That's how fresh the data mine information is. So before we talk about Yomiya's kit, right? Just want to talk about the aesthetic of the character. Other than Yomiya's kit, I will also run through like what is the design itself that MiHoYo is trying to get us towards for her. And I'll talk about her signature weapon, her artifact as well, because all those are brand new. All those are brand new in terms of the artifact, the bow, even the materials required for them are brand new. So it's a very promising sign that we are gonna get Inazuma on 1.7 because there's tons of new materials, new talent books, etc. So looking very good for us guys. Now let's talk about Yomiya itself. I really love her design here. In fact, I just noticed that this bow is the new 4-star bow. If I have a chance to talk about it later, but I want to talk about the 5-star bow that is really inbound on her. And this year makes me want to go for her 100%. Pull for her 100%. Why? Because it completely is so ninja-like, right? The design. I mean, the moment you see this, it's like, oh, Orochimaru and Sasuke for Naruto came to mind, right? And not to mention, she also dresses like a Konoichi, if you notice. So it's really good. I'm very keen on her. The moment I saw her, this character design, I know I've decided not to pull for C2 Klee. C0 Klee is enough as a character collection, like a Pokemon collection. So I definitely would want to pull for her in terms of wielding on her. But first off, let's talk about her kit. Now we've finished talking about the aesthetic part of it. I think it's really good. I like it. Okay, now let's talk about her talents and her. First, let's talk about her Ascension stat. Okay, now let's go to the Honey Hunter screen. Okay, so like I said, right, only Chinese information is available. You gotta bear me, but no worries. I can do a live translation. I can translate directly for you guys. You can't use Google Translate because it's picture, the format and the website is picture. But you can use the Google Translate on your phone to look at the website if you really want to have a translation. But nevertheless, I'll do the translation in the video itself. This is really fresh because you don't even have a name here. This literally says test character underscore 49. Okay, this really says test character underscore 49. So you don't even have a name for her yet in the data mine information. But of course, we know that she's Yomiya. Just look at this picture, you know it's her. Okay, and her birthday is very near to my birthday actually. 2 days difference. Okay, so crit rate is her Ascension stat. That's very nice. Any 5-star character with crit rate or crit damage Ascension stat is always good. It's always good, guys. And you see here that her Ascension materials are different. This is likely going to be the new Pyro Hypothesis. And for this is going to be some other material that you can get in Inazuma. Okay, so that's why I say it's looking good. It's looking good that these characters are going to be coming with Inazuma to us. Right? Excuse the ad here. I got to support Honey Hunter, right? Instead of using ad block. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about her talents. I think this here is the reason why everyone is saying that she's like a Pyro Ganyu. But I actually feel that it's different, and I'll talk about why. So pretty standard, 5 hits for 5 different attacks, not hits, 5 different attacks on her bow attack, normal attack. She's a Pyro Bow user. So similar to Ganyu, she has 2 stages of charging. The first stage of charging is just a elemental arrow. The second stage of charging, instead of Ganyu having the Frost Flick Bloom AoE damage, for Yomiya, it's actually, what happens is that she will trigger 3 different type of arrows, additional 3 flaming arrows, and when she releases her charge attack, these 3 will be released as well. And what this tree does is that they do a homing attack on nearby. It sounds to me like they do a auto target on nearby enemies instead of following whichever you are targeting. Based on this description, based on the attack animation leak that I saw, there's no charge attack yet, so we don't know how it works. But the 3 flaming arrows, obviously they do pyro damage. This is what this portion here is saying. When it hits, it will be dealing pyro damage. It sounds like it's not like Ganyu where you do AoE damage from on where you hit. It simply triggers 3 additional homing arrows, which sounds imba, but if you look at the damage percentage, the attack percentage, is not that great, honestly speaking. I actually have the feeling that she's not a charge attack character, and I'll talk about that. I mean, you can still use her charge attack during her downtime, her elemental skill downtime, but it's not optimal per se. Yeah, but of course, if you like the animation, you do you, man. After all, this is a single player gacha game, so yeah, play what you like, man. I'm just here to share in terms of how her kit is like and how it looks like the best optimal way is to play her. By no means am I enforcing a meta slave type of concept. Okay, so first 5 figures, very straightforward. These are her normal attack percentage. I'll just look at level 9. The highest level you can go without using a crown and without constellations. Alright, so level 9 looking good for a bow attack, honestly speaking. Pretty high. Not too bad. Okay, this is her charge attack, the first level. 210.8%, this is starting to look good, right? This is her fully charged pyro attack, the main arrow itself. This 27.88% is the damage per flaming homing arrow that I mentioned, the 3 homing arrows. So, like I said, right, it's nowhere near Ganyu's damage. Let's take a look at Ganyu's damage. Where's my Ganyu? So, if you look at her normal attack, right, Ganyu's normal attack can't compare with Yomiya. Yomiya's normal attack is insane. Okay, it's really good. Yomiya's normal attack. Just take a look at it. It's like every hit is 100+%, right? It's really good. She is a normal attack character, not a charge attack character in my opinion. I mean, just look at the charge attack percentage as opposed to the normal attack. This is not that great. And if you compare Ganyu's charge attack, just look at this. We're talking about 217.6% is the first one, which almost the same as Yomiya's. Okay, 210.8%, slightly higher Ganyu's. But the Frostflake Arrow Bloom damage is 369.92%. Let's just call it 370%, because that's what you see in game, 370%. I know because I have Ganyu, right? In fact, I already crowned her normal attack recently, 392%. Okay, but let's look at level 9 for comparison. We're talking about 370% AoE damage. But Yomiya's isn't. Yomiya is just having a bonus, 27.8% times 3, which is still less than 100%. It's about less than 90%. It's about 84-85%. Just some quick math in my mind. So I really don't think she's a charge attack character. And I'll talk more you will see more of what I mean when you look at the elemental skill. But as of now, we look at the attack percentage, we know that her normal attack percentage is sky high. And her charge attack is special, but it's not that great. Okay, this is just plunge damage, and this is the low plunge damage to the high plunge damage, very standard. Now let's talk about elemental skill. I really need to pick up the pace, otherwise this video will get very long. It's already 9 minutes in. Wow. Alright. Now, her elemental skill is somewhat like a skill where she goes into a mode or a stance, where her normal attacks become flaming arrows. The damage that she deals becomes pyro. So basically she's infused with pyro, her attacks. At the same time, there's a bonus to her normal attacks. And when you are using your elemental skill, your charge attack is disabled. The second charge attack is disabled. The one with the homing arrows. It says here that basically you can't generate your homing arrows on the second charge. Okay? And this effect ends the moment you swap out. So this is very similar to Hu Tao. even the duration and cooldown kind of concept is the same, although Yomiya's is longer. In terms of both the duration and cooldown, Yomiya is longer than Hu Tao. Hu Tao is something like lasts 9 seconds and cooldown is 16 seconds, if I didn't remember wrongly. Yomiya is 10 seconds, lasts for 10 seconds, and cooldown 20 seconds. You see here, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Bonus 158.79% normal attack damage. Now, based on this description, it's unclear whether or not it's plus 158.79 or it's just 158.79, meaning that the actual boost is 58.79%. But based on how Genshin has been like so far, I'm inclined to think that it's a plus 158.79% on her normal attacks in her elemental skill mode, which is very, very nice, by the way. You go into a mode where you get pyro damage and you get a bonus 158.79%. Even if it's not plus 158.79, even if it's 58.79%, it's still nice because her normal attack damage is so high, the percentage, right? The attack percentage is so high. Of course, bear in mind that this is very, very new, very, very fresh. This is still in beta, it may change. But based on what we are seeing here, her normal attack looks really strong. Okay. And the elemental skill straight up is designed for normal attacks, right? The charge attack is even disabled during her elemental skill. And it's like Hu Tao, where it lasts for a certain amount of time and then has a longer cooldown, so there is a downtime. In fact, the downtime here we are talking about 10 seconds here. Okay. Oh dear, my newborn is crying. Okay. Anyway, my wife and confidantly is taking care of it. So 10 seconds downtime here. So what happens during the 10 seconds? That's where her elemental burst skill comes in, and we'll talk about it. You may think that the 10 second downtime you can use a charge attack, which is feasible, but like I said, it's not optimal. Okay, now I'll talk about that, why. Okay, now let's talk about her elemental burst. Her elemental burst, basically she jumps out into the air, and she fires a powerful pyro charge shot, the AoE pyro charge shot in front of her. And once one of the enemies being hit by her elemental burst skill will be inflicted with a status or effect here, 属金火冠. I'm not sure what the English translation will be, but it's basically saying that it's inflicted with status, so somewhat similar to the Hu Tao's Blood Blossom. Hu Tao's Blood Blossom triggers every 4 seconds automatically without any condition, whereas this 属金火冠, which is the effect from the elemental burst, is different. So let's talk about how it works. Every character in your party, other than Yomiya herself, when they hit any opponent that is marked by this 属金火冠 effect, when they use a normal attack, charge attack, plunge attack, elemental skill, elemental burst, any of these 5, when they hit an enemy that has been marked by her elemental burst, it will trigger a AoE pyro explosion. AoE. We don't know how big the AoE is, because whatever lead animation you have right now doesn't show that. The lead animation for the burst only shows how her burst looks like in terms of casting. It doesn't show this mark effect yet. I believe the leakers are taking their time to slowly release it. And this second statement here is basically saying that if an enemy that is marked by this elemental burst effect dies or is defeated, the mark will be automatically transferred to another enemy nearby and continues its existing time. It doesn't refresh, it continues the existing time. It inherits, if I do a translation, it inherits the remaining duration. And this mark, this elemental burst mark, it does damage every 2 seconds. Hu Tao's damage is every 4 seconds. This is basically saying that the most it can do, the highest frequency it can do is every 2 seconds. There's a cooldown to it per se. So you can hit with all 5 of these attacks: normal attack, charge attack, plunge attack, elemental skill, elemental burst, multiple times within the 2 seconds, but it will only trigger once every 2 seconds. And if Yoimiya is defeated during the duration of the mark, the mark that is applied by Yoimiya herself will disappear. What this means is that the very first enemy that was marked by Yomiya's burst cast effect, that mark effect will be disappeared if Yoimiya dies. But if the first enemy was defeated and the mark moves to another enemy, then it will not disappear. This is important to understand this part here because one of the constellation also states this as one of the conditions. Whether or not it's a mark applied by Yoimiya herself, or whether it's a mark that travels after the first mark opponent is defeated. Okay? Pretty straightforward, I think. So essentially, let's talk about more of how this can be used, right? So what this means is that you can just cast her burst, because her burst doesn't end the moment you switch out. It only disappears when you die, or rather when Yomiya is defeated. So just cast it, switch out to other characters, or vice versa, you can switch the other characters who can cast skills that stay on the field. Example, Rosara's burst, Leona's burst, Ganyu's burst, Fisher's Oz, Beido's burst. There are many elemental skills or bursts that can stay on the field or stay with the character as they attack. The thing about this mark effect is that it actually does pretty nice damage. If you look at the percentage here, this is the actual burst effect, the cast effect when she shoots the arrow, Yomiya. This is the burst, AoE burst damage that happens every 2 seconds. Okay? And for easy remembering, right? For Yomiya's burst, it lasts 10 seconds and cooldown is also 20 seconds. So you can kind of see the pattern of using her, right? Use her elemental skill for 10 seconds, spam all your normal attacks as you were. Once this ends, switch to you casting her burst. Her burst lasts for 10 seconds and you use other characters to trigger her burst effect. During this downtime, obviously, you can also switch to you can choose not to switch. You can switch to the other characters to trigger their on-field effect, like Fisher Oz, Rosara burst, etc. And then you switch back to Yomiya and use her charge attack instead of normal attacks, if you like her charge attacks. But I don't think it's optimal, unless her charge attacks are AoE, but it's not, right? Because the AoE comes from her burst. So think of it this way, her elemental burst is not meant for her to be, it's not meant to be used in conjunction with her. It's really meant to be more like a support type of skill, off-screen kind of skill. Because Yomiya herself's, Yomiya's normal attack, charge attack, plunging attack, elemental skill, and elemental burst does not trigger the explosion or the effect every 2 seconds of the mark. Only the skills from your other party members does this. Okay, but obviously there are ways to work around this. For example, use Xingqiu together with your Yomiya, cast Xingqiu's ultimate, and then you use Yomiya's normal attack. And Xingqiu's burst will be triggering all the vaporize, right? And it will still also trigger this burst. So that's nice as well. That's another way to create crazy amount of vaporize or even melt, depending on whether you are using Xingqiu or Rosaria example. So there's a lot of possibilities here. And based on what I can tell from the description, it sounds like her burst is going to be the one that triggers either the melt or vaporized or even overloaded, depending on what you are setting her up with. It really looks like, to me, it's going to be all of the it's going to be the one that trigger her elemental skill mark effect should be based on the one that triggers the reaction. Since if I read the description correctly, it says that when you do a normal attack, for example, then it triggers the burst. Then it triggers the mark's explosion, the AoE pyro damage. So yeah, I think these will be the triggering attack reaction wise. So she might be the character to benefit from elemental mastery then. Okay. So all in all, looking good for her elemental mastery skill. She is different from Ganyu in the sense that she is a normal attack character rather than can't use a charge attack character. Right, so there you go. This is her kit. I guess it's pretty straightforward. Use her elemental skill for 10 seconds, you get a bonus to your normal attack as well as pyro infusion. And then when you switch to using her burst, you have to use it in conjunction with other characters, either their normal attacks. If you are using her burst as a support, you switch to other characters to do DPS instead of her during her downtime for her elemental skill. Or you can use other characters to cast effects that will still work with Yomiya back on the field during her downtime. Really depends on how you want to set it up, but it's looking good. This entire kit, I like it. I like the damage potential so far as well. In fact, her signature weapon and artifacts is very, very interesting. They work in a very, very different way, where you are basically abandoning your elemental burst and making her a very, very selfish DPS per se. And we'll talk about more about that later. But what it does basically is that it wouldn't completely remove the elemental burst, but I'll talk more about it when we reach there. There's a lot of content to cover for this. So you see here, these are the new talent books. It's very nice. It looks like a ninja scroll, yeah. So like I said, it's new Inazuma region, so there's going to be new books. Just like when you look at Monster and Li Yue, they have different books, right? So likewise, you have different talent books, or rather scrolls, if you look at the icon here. Alright, let's talk about Yomiya's passive talents. So here, we have her effect. It's basically when you are creating furnishings in the Serenitea Pot, you get a 100% chance to get some portion of the materials back. So for example, if you're using your pine wood or even your white enchant, you actually get a 100% chance to get some portion of it back. So this is nice. Little bit late though, and I mean, unless they increase the trust rate, maybe this is more worthwhile, but yeah, kinda late to get a character with this talent in 1.76 weeks later. But yeah, let's see how it goes. It's still nice though, and it's 100% return, not like freaking Sucrose. I hate Sucrose effect, because for some reason Sucrose effect always fails to trigger for me. I can craft 300 items and the return rate, although it's 12%, I always end up getting something like 5%. But okay, anyway, enough complaining about Sucrose effect. Sucrose is very, very good now, by the way, with the EM buff. She does crazy amount of damage. Okay, now let's talk about her second passive talent. Basically, this says that during the elemental skill effect, Yomiya's normal attack when they hit an enemy, you will give her a 2% pyro elemental damage bonus. This effect lasts for 3 seconds, and you can stack it for 10 times. 10 times, guys. Which means you get a 20% pyro damage boost as long as you keep attacking and there's enemies for you to attack. If you look at her skills, right, there's a 2 hit here and a 2 hit here. So a full combo is 7 hits. Okay, a full combo is 7 hits. I'll say it's very, very easy to get the 10 stats. It's very easy to get the 10 stats. Very easy to get a 20% pyro bonus. Now, what this final Ascension talent here says, the passive talent, after casting your elemental burst, within 15 seconds after casting your elemental burst, all nearby party members, excluding Yomiya, gets an attack 10% attack buff. Yomiya doesn't get it, the rest of the party members do. Nearby party members, so it means co-op members will get it as well as your own team members if you're playing solo. Additionally, based on when Yomiya is casting her, okay. So this talent works with this talent. What this here is saying is that when Yomiya casts her elemental burst, based on the number of stats that you have from this talent, it will also increase the attack buff for this 10% attack buff. Increase it. Every step will give you 1%. So in other words, right, let's say you use her elemental skill first, you do all the attack, 10 seconds after her elemental skill ends, you have another 10 seconds of downtime, right? At this point in time, your Yomiya has 10 stacks. from this passive talent, what happens is that if you cast her elemental burst right after her annual skill ends and you have your 10 stacks, instead of giving 10% attack buff, it gives a 20% attack buff because it's 10 plus 10. So it gives a 20% attack buff to your nearby party members, excluding Yomiya. Which is why the reason I say that charge attack isn't optimal to be used during Yomiya's downtime. Because obviously what you want is to use the other characters instead. But it's still okay because, like I said, if you use those characters that cast a few attacks like Fisher's Oz, Rosetta's Burst, etc., it's still okay because the moment you cast this burst, you switch to other characters, they already get the 20% buff, assuming you have all 10 stats. They already get the 20% buff. So it's still okay. That's why I say charge attack is still feasible. It's not optimal, but it's feasible to use charge attack during her downtime. I personally, depending on how I set up the Jin Kong, I probably try to avoid using her charge attack. But let's see how that goes. Okay, now let's talk about her constellations. So her passive talent is very straightforward. Again, it's focused on her basic attacks, and based on her basic normal attacks, it in turn creates a buff effect from her burst. Alright, now let's talk about constellations. Man, the video has gone on longer than I wanted, but there's a lot of ground to cover here. So yeah. Alright, now let's talk about the elemental burst. The first constellation, what it does is to increase the duration of the elemental burst by 4 seconds. So instead of 10 seconds, it goes to 14 seconds. Additionally, if the enemy that's affected by Yomiya's elemental burst effect, her mark, applied by Yomiya herself, not the mark that goes out to another enemy after the first enemy is defeated. We're talking about the first enemy that got marked. If it was defeated during the elemental burst effect, it also increases Yomiya's attack by 20%, and this lasts 20 seconds. 20 seconds means that it's more than enough time for you to switch back to your Yomiya after her downtime, after her elemental skill is ready, use her elemental skill and you'll still get a 20% attack buff. So is this C1 good? Oh hell yeah, it's good, man. It is good. Right? And on top of that, the 4 second extension of the duration here, what this means is that it's gonna give her 2 more of the pyro explosion from her elemental burst mark effect. So this is really nice. Okay, this constellation is very nice. And it makes her downtime for elemental burst only 6 seconds, but assuming you got enough energy to do it. Yeah, it's 80 energy by the way, her burst. Okay, now let's talk about Constellation 2. Yomiya's pyro elemental damage when it does a crit, 6 seconds after any of her pyro elemental damage does a crit, Yomiya gets a 25% pyro elemental damage bonus. Even if Yomiya is off the field, not on the field, she can still get this. But what kind of scenario will she get this? What kind of scenario will fulfill this? The elemental burst, right? Cast the elemental burst, move on to another character, get the mark to explode, and when that mark does a crit, Yomiya gets 25%. Yomiya is still able to get 25% elemental damage, but obviously she'll get the 25% elemental damage bonus when she first casts the burst. It's more like 6 seconds after this duration and this effect ends, your mark explodes again, and then you get another 25%. You are able to effectively get the 25% damage bonus in a pretty consistent manner, every 6 seconds basically. So this is nice. This also is a constellation that does increase her damage. It's not like other 5-star characters, some of it is just utility or cooldown reduction. This really increases the damage directly. And she's pyro element on top of that. That's why I say she's really strong. Her Constellation 3 adds to her elemental skill, 3 levels, very standard stuff, but always good. I don't know why people sort of like overlook the C3 and C5. To me, C3 and C5 is really good because each level, typically, you get a 7% boost. And it's boost on top of the previous level. So it's like compounded, you get like more than 21% buff from this on her elemental skill, for example, and then on her burst as well. So to me, Constellations C3 and C5 is always good. Just as not exciting, but it's good. Alright, now let's talk about C4. So your C4 is saying when Yomiya's mark, the elemental burst mark, applied by herself, her burst, her cast effect, when that explodes, when that triggers the every 2 seconds explosion, every time it happens, the elemental skill cooldown get reduced by 1 second. C4 is really good, guys. C4 is really good. It's OP, man. I mean, just think about it. You cast her burst, you already finished her elemental skill, you swap out to casting her burst, and every 2 seconds after that, the mark effect triggers an AoE explosion, you get a 1 second duration reduction. So if you think about the time it takes, the downtime that you have, that 10 seconds from her elemental skill downtime, in that 10 seconds likely you'll be able to trigger this about 3 times before the element skill is ready. Because 2 seconds times 3 is 6, plus 1 second reduction, that's about 9 seconds. And you factor in the cast down of the burst, switching out the other characters, casting, etc. This effect only needs to take place 3 times, 2 to 3 times in fact. If you include all the other characters casting time, it will be 2. If you don't include other characters casting time, maybe only 1 character, then it's about 3 times. So what this means is that her downtime effectively is something like 7 to 8 seconds instead of 10 seconds. This is what the C4 does here. And given how heavy her kit relies on normal attack, this is really good. She's a character where every single freaking constellation is good, man. Now let's talk about C6. C5 is very straightforward, 3 levels to her burst. For reference, okay, let's look at her burst. So it goes level 9 to level 12. This is the amount of damage boost that you get. Okay. Likewise for her elemental skill. Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about her C6. What C6 does is during her elemental skill effect, when Yomiya triggers her normal attack, there's a 40% chance to fire an additional flaming arrow that does 50% of her original attack. So let's say if you're on the first attack, I think the 40% chance arrow does 50% of this. I'm guessing it's only 50% of the 59.94%. Let's say if you're on your third hit and it triggers the C6 effect, it's probably going to it should be 50% of this 149.49%. That's how I understand the text to be, the effect. And that additional arrow will also be considered as a normal attack damage. 40% chance is pretty good. In fact, if you saw the Yomiya Lake attack animation, right, her normal attacks, right, you'll notice that there was an additional arrow that was fired out, a pyro arrow was fired out while she was doing her normal attacks to an enemy on the right. I believe that's the C6 effect that was displayed. So 40% chance is not too shabby. It's something that can trigger quite consistently if you ask me. So that's not too bad. But it's not groundbreakingly good, in my opinion, unless this additional arrow triggers this stat effect. Oh, but it does, right? Because this attack is considered a normal attack damage. So I would guess that it should also be considered as a normal attack here. And it helps to buff up her stats too, right? It helps her to get her 10 stats within 1 attack cycle, basically, right? Can we think of it that way? There's 7 hits in 1 normal attack cycle, getting 3, that's about 40%, right? So it means that instead of having to do 10 attacks, 10 hits, she can get her full 10 stats in 1 cycle. That's only 7 attacks, 7 rounds of attack. Sorry, 7 hits and 5 rounds of attack. So basically, that is what this C6 does as well. It helps you get that stat early. Okay, and generally speaking, it improves your AoE by your damage about 20% if I were to do the math as a very simple explanation, right? 40% chance, and it's a 50% of your original attack, so it's about 20% in terms of overall DPS. I mean, as a very simple extrapolation. Okay, so I think I have to do a separate video on her weapon and her artifact, because it's gonna be it's a brand new weapon and brand new artifacts as well. I think I'll do a separate video on that because this video is already 25 minutes. There's way too much ground to cover, and I was already trying to speak as fast as possible without while trying to make sure that whatever I explain is clear to you guys. Okay, so essentially what I see Yomiya as is she's a main DPS character that is focused on using her normal attacks, using her elemental skill to buff her normal attack, and using her elemental burst while her elemental skill is on downtime, and use it as a support to work together with other characters to trigger her max explosion. That's every 2 seconds, and that max every 2 seconds explosion looks to be the one that will trigger the reactions, be it vaporized, melt, or overloaded, or whatever else that you are setting it up with. Okay, so she's definitely a DPS character. I don't really see her as a sub DPS per se. You can use her as a sub DPS, but she's better as a main DPS. She's better optimized as a main DPS. And as for charge attack, I don't think she's a charge attack character. I think she's a normal attack focus with her elemental skill during pyro, and then you have a bit of downtime. If you have all the constellations, your downtime is very short, and you cast your characters, you swap your characters in, you do their casting. You don't really need to use a charge attack. You can also use the other characters to attack instead, and you'll still be able to trigger all her burst effect. The every 2 seconds explosion here, the damage here, 220.32%. If you don't have high constellations, you still have a 10-second countdown. Effectively, I'm talking about the C4 here. If you don't have C4, you still have a 10-second countdown. It's definitely feasible to use a charge attack. I just don't think that it's optimized, but it's feasible because her charge attack is pyro damage, and you're going to build her pyro damage bonus, etc. So you can still make use of that. It's just not as optimized, but obviously, if she's your only main DPS character while the other characters are sub DPS, then obviously you will use her charge attack during her downtime, right? After you switch all the other 3 characters and you cast all their off-field DPS skills. So I hope this video or this breakdown of her kit in terms of her talents and her constellations and her passive talents is I hope it's pretty clear to you guys what type of character design she is. She's definitely not a Ganyu. Because Ganyu is charge attack. She's not charge attack, she is normal attack. And her AoE Pyro AoE comes from her elemental burst. Not her elemental skill, but her elemental burst. And her elemental burst is more like it forces you to interact with other characters. Okay, it's not like Ganyu where I can cast her elemental burst and I can stay inside her elemental burst field and even get a 30% cryo damage bonus. If I didn't remember wrongly, there's a cryo damage bonus. So it's different in that concept, but it's still very nice. It still does very decent amount of damage, and you can still use off-field DPS characters, sub-characters, so that you can continue using your Yomiya during the downtime using her charge attack. It's definitely doable. So we have to see when Yomiya gets released whether or not doing her charge attack is the best, or maybe using other characters instead. So it really depends on the situation as well, right? Because sometimes depends on your enemy. If your enemy is a pyro shield, obviously you want to switch to a hydro character and try to break the shield instead during her downtime, right? So anyway, that is the gist of it for Yomiya. I'm really looking forward to her aesthetics. Huge. She definitely gets a high rating from me. Her entire kit itself as well, I like it. It looks to be very imba in terms of damage, single target damage at least, and depending on how big her AoE burst damage is from her elemental burst, the mark from her elemental burst, it's hard to tell whether or not she's gonna be, if her AoE effect from her burst every 2 seconds explosion is a huge area, and she's gonna be more than just a powerful single target TPS. And don't forget that she also gives an attack buff to her team members as well. So there is that option of her helping to buff her team a bit during the force interaction with the other characters while casting her burst. So that's the general concept of Yomiya. I think I will stop the video here. I'll probably do a second video to talk about her bow as well as the new artifact, where that new artifact actually reduces your energy, to give you some type of boost. We'll talk about that later. But I believe even with the artifact, you'll still be able to use her burst. Okay. So anyway, I hope the content has been helpful to you guys. If you like the content, remember the video and click subscribe for more. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.